Welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco, your personal financial technician. Whether you've had years of success in your business or just starting out, High Lift Financial can help you create a vision for your business, life, and family, and align these for generational wealth. So as they say, what happens in your life affects your business. And now, on to the show. Well, hello, welcome to Your Business, Your Life with me, Matt DiFrancesco. And, as the title of the podcast is, what happens in your business affects your life and your life affects your business. And, as we know, over 70% of all businesses, and this is similar in the collision industry, are owned by our family businesses. So there's family members that are owned by the family. Many times there's multiple family members that are running them. And as a result, there's many interesting dynamics that happen with them. So I'm really excited to have my guest on this week because this is what he does, is help coach family businesses. It's Pete Walsh. Pete is a family business consultant. He spent 16 years in his own family business and went from 86 years, I guess that business was in existence.
It did. We had 300 employees when I left. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. So he knows firsthand about the challenges that they face. So he founded what's called the Peak Workout Business Coaching System. That was in 1997. In 2013, he launched the Family Business Performance Center with the intention of impacting more family businesses by making his proven practices available free online to any family business willing to get started stronger. And he actually does personal coaching with some clients there too. So he's a second generation Arizona native, which is interesting because I didn't know there were first generation Arizonians, at least in Phoenix. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and he's had a wonderful wife of 35 years, and he's got two great 30-something children. So, Pete, I'm really excited to have you on. Pete, welcome to Your Business, Your Life.
Thanks for having me here, Matt. I'm really excited to be here. I love getting to impact business owners. I wish people were maybe as easy to fix as cars. I see cars behind you, so you can take the fender off, put a new one on, put some fresh paint on there. But the business that I'm in is a lot more complicated, dealing with people. And I was thinking about this. For 40 years, I've been studying the hearts and minds of people. I'm trying to rebuild the hearts and minds of people, how they look at working together, leadership, getting the most out of your employees, getting productivity. And I would say that it's gotten a lot more complicated over that past 30 or 40 years, because in our business, back when I was there, we were like the paternal leader. We had their hearts and minds. They didn't have a lot of distractions. They didn't have a smartphone, social media. So we had a company newsletter, company meetings. They really trusted us. They believed in us, and we had a good team. Today, people are a lot more distracted, and there's just so much coming at them. And as business owners, that we've got to have a focused, productive team. And so I say leadership is trickier than ever. And so it's really important that you start studying leadership and you help your leaders become the most effective they can be to get the most out of the employees and keep loyal, productive people.
That's exactly right. And, it's interesting. One of the things I run into is because we come from the baby boomer generation. And of course, our parents were the greatest generation. And there was a certain work ethic, like we'll put the hours in, we'll do this. We kind of wear the 50, 60, 70 hour a week badge on as a badge of honor. But now you've got you got Gen X, you've got the millennials, now even Gen Y, and they've kind of got different. It's not that they're not ambitious, but their value systems are a little different. And what I find is there's a lot of conflicts between those two groups. I think what you're saying, that this family dynamic can be very interesting. I like the approach that you take about leadership. So first off, just wanted to give you a little bit of background about how you were led to do leadership coaching for family businesses.
It's a great story. I've told it many times. So my life dream was to run our family business. I grew up in the family business. I got a degree in management and marketing. I went into the family business. I worked my way up the ladder for 16 years. I was vice president of the company, and I realized my uncle and I didn't see eye to eye. Life was short. I had lost two brothers and two best friends that stood up for me in my wedding by the time I was in my mid 30s.
Wow.
So in my mid 30s, I'm realizing, boy, life's short. And my uncle loved the guy, workaholic. He's going to work forever. And so I was like, man, I got to figure this out. And I was at church. And I like to say to people, I'm highly spiritual, although not highly religious. A recovering Catholic is the way I say it.
Oh,
And the
ouch,
ser
ouch.
this the sermon was about finding your special gift. And I prayed in that moment and said, help me find what mine is, because I know I can hit a home run for you. Those were my exact words.
Okay.
3 days later, a friend of mine who owned a construction company said, our coach said this. And I said, your coach, what's that? And she said, somebody that helps us develop our plans and hold us accountable. And I said, you're kidding. That's a job. Oh my God. I ran home and told Karen, I said, I know what I'm supposed to do. I was a coaching leader. I was actually bringing guys and gals together. We were talking about how we could get better. We were rehearsing. We were reviewing how we did. And this was before anybody even knew what a coach was. And so I went to coaching school. I got a coaching certificate, and I went to my family and I said, I'm going to be a coach part-time nights and weekends. They're like, okay. And then I started getting some clients and they loved what we did. And I went back to my family and said, I'm going to go be a coach. And they were like, you're kidding. And all of our employees were like, you're kidding. You're
Oh,
going to
wow.
do what? And so the way I tell the story is the guy or gal upstairs, I thought my life's mission was to run our family business, but their mission for me was to impact a lot of family businesses. So I get to impact family businesses worldwide now. We sold our family business to Target Corporation about 10 years later.
Okay.
So the other thing that I try to help family businesses understand is a business has a life cycle, just like a person. And you and I were just talking about some of that.
Right.
Like, it's going to evolve. It's a newborn, it's a teenager, it's a toddler, a teenager, it's middle aged, it's got to be retired. So I help families in all stages of that.
Mhm.
And I'm a leadership coach, so I'm helping them communicate better. I'm helping them build better cultures for their employees and for their family,
Mhm.
and to be effective so that they can have a happy, successful business and family life.
And that makes complete sense. And the key word I think that you said there was culture. And something we've been talking a lot about in the collision industry is about developing culture, whether their kids are in the business or not. What I find is that the shops that are growing the fastest have developed a culture of leadership.
That's
And
great.
it's not just from the top, but all the way down. And, one thing I've learned, especially as we're looking at, evaluating businesses, trying to find out valuations, that if there's a culture of entrepreneurship within the whole business, that actually raises the value of the business too.
For
Um,
sure.
so, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, especially with these family businesses. So, soon we've got, mom and dad that are in the business and the kids are working in there. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see that these businesses face?
Well, I think part of it is learning to communicate, learning to set expectations. Again, I keep looking at those cars over your
Yeah,
shoulder.
right.
I mean, we can have an opinion about whether or not we did a good job, but there are standards about this is what this looks like when it's done right and all of that. So I think one of the things is to set a clear playing field about what it means to be a business professional, what it means to produce good business results. You said it in the introduction. I've got a couple 30 somethings in my house. They're not in my house anymore, thank God, but they were born in the and raised in the same house, but they have different expectations of the world.
Yeah.
So a coaching leader, Matt, a coaching leader learns how to set a good clear playing field and help every player understand how they can be successful. And in families that gets really complicated. It gets really hard to be able to say, like, and there's a model that I use. Again, let me put on my coaching hat for a moment and give
Huh?
you some feedback. Now let me put on my dad hat or my brother or sister hat. But
Right.
all of that gets kind of folded together for people and they don't know how to deal with it.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. And I always use the analogy when I'm working with clients. I tell them, I said, whatever they want to accomplish, whether it's a family transition, whether it's to sell the business, whether it's to continue on, but how can we become more effective and adapt with the times?
Yeah.
Um, Really, to do that, it's like a puzzle. And really, a puzzle's pretty
Mhm.
easy to put together because you just got to put the pieces that fit together. The problem is, have you ever tried to do a puzzle when you haven't seen the picture on the box? And I
That's
think,
very good. Yeah, that's
I,
really good.
well, I think that picture in the box, a lot of that is also kind of what you're talking about. What is the family dynamic? How do we all come together to create a family vision? And
For
then how
sure.
can we each be a part of that family vision? Because I think once you define that, I say my tagline's aligning family and businesses for generational wealth, because
Yeah.
my philosophy is, look, we want to create multi-generational legacies, whether it's with the business or with, the assets from the business, or however that may
Mhm,
work.
mhm.
But again, everybody's got to kind of know where their role is. So, how, when you've got all these different personalities and you're trying to kind of pull together this family vision, I mean, how do you determine how that's going to happen and how those roles are who's going to take what roles
Yeah.
within the family?
Yeah, what's funny, even when you said that, I was thinking like we need sometimes outside objective feedback. So I
Mm,
have a little bit of a joke, and I'm getting older now. I'm in my early 60s,
mhm,
that I would go into a family business and I say to dad, shut up and give these kids a little bit of room, would you? And then I say to the kids, hey, shut up and listen to dad. He's pretty smart, dad or mom. So the first thing also is just a little bit of objective voice in the room. This just came up with a new client this week, and
mhm,
and the son and the father, and the son said, well, I'm going to listen to what coach says because I think he's got objectivity. It's
mhm,
really hard in a family to have objectivity. I want to tell you in full disclosure that Karen and I just hired a family therapist
mhm,
because we were having some issues we were dealing with and we weren't quite sure how to handle it. And she
mhm,
said, well, have you ever considered X and Y? And it's like, oh, darn it, there it is right there. And I'm in the helping business, but many times, first of all, it's just to get people to learn how to step back and be more objective about what's really happening. And that's where my process comes in, where we can sit down and understand everybody's view of the world. And then we can compare and see where we're aligned and where we're not aligned.
mhm.
And then it is a process over time because these things don't just happen in one meeting like, oh, okay, now we're all fine. We have to kind of shape and teach them how to collaborate. The other thing that comes up a lot, Matt, which is conflict is normal. One client 25 years ago said, that's how we get the most juice out of the orange. So, see, in these families, they don't do conflict very well and they
No.
take it personally and they're like, oh, dad's always liked him better. And
Mhm,
so I teach them how to actually embrace conflict and how to learn how to use that to your advantage to make the business the best it can be. And, you and I have sayings like this in our line of work, but a friend of mine said one time, the business throws the party. So if the business is
mhm.
successful and it's generating good revenue, cash flow, wealth opportunities for the family, the other things will take care of itself. But many times I get the people, the goose that's laying the golden eggs, and everybody's got their hand around the neck of the
Yeah.
goose like this. And it's like, guys, you're about to kill the goose that's laying the golden eggs.
Right. Well, and it's interesting you say that because I've had situations where, especially if there's kids that are in the business, and sometimes it's a dynamic that the parents maybe unintentionally set up, or maybe
Yeah,
it's just, pervasive, but this idea of entitlement. And
no
so,
question.
give you a great example. One of my clients had two sons in the business. The dad and the sons were banging heads. And part of it was the one son, he just felt he was entitled. And it's like, oh, great. I'm going to come in here and I see this cash cow and this money's coming in and I'm going to take it over and my life is going to be set. The other kid wanted to build something, but he just wasn't emotionally mature enough to do it. So
Yeah,
now
right.
all of a sudden they're fighting and dad's, trying to manage all this stuff. And he's like, no, you're not entitled. You don't understand. And so, these are dynamics I think that happen all the time. Here's dad who's exasperated, doesn't know what to do. So what are some strategies that maybe parents should look at? Or, I think the first strategy is they should hire somebody like you to help navigate those type of
Well,
things.
Some other strategies, and it's funny, I like to say what comes to my mind, and a couple things that just came to my mind. For me, I joined our industry associations, and all of a sudden I started getting responsibility there, and people started asking me to lead. And so a lot of times in these families, it's
Mhm.
like, hey, go out and get involved in your community, get involved in your industry association, keep building your education, your own leadership brand, if you will, rather than just sitting here and telling dad and brother, you ought to listen to me. Keep broadening your experience. Find ways to find other places to test out your leadership ability. And back to your thing with dad, I mean, one of the worst things as a parent is to have to try to judge or critique your kid's performance.
Right.
And like in our case, we were a Steelcase office furniture dealership, and
Okay.
Steelcase had a lot of good tools and programs that we could get in where we would, and I'm sure this is in this industry as
Oh
well,
yeah.
where we can compare ourselves to the best run shops. Let's start to bring some objective measurements rather than just our opinions about each other. What are the most best run shops doing for a profitability or for gross profit or for growth or for turnover? So we want to kind of objectify it. We want to find a way to more clearly measure what's going on. And again, and I think you and I probably be on the same page about this, involved outside an informal board of advisors,
Yeah.
mentors for your kids. I had one of my greatest mentors, and I just felt like saying his name now. His name, Larry Sneed, which was one of our non-professional managers that was in our company. And he was a great mentor for me. And he's like, no, your uncle's really not that off track on that. Or, yeah, you're right about that. So get some outside mentors, whether they're coaches, consultants, get some other people to help you get through it.
No, that makes complete sense. And I think, again, that's the one thing I think having that outside expert, Jesus, when he went to his hometown, they went back to Nazareth, he was teaching at the synagogue. And what did they all say? They're like, well, who's this guy? The carpenter.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
What the heck does he know? And he
yeah.
couldn't perform any miracles. And I think, they always say you'll never be a prophet in your own hometown. And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
That's
And
really good.
and having
Yeah.
the outside person there. I mean, look, if Jesus couldn't do it, how are we?
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think having that outside person to be able to kind of navigate these things, and I've had situations, especially with some of the family business where the kids, I'll kind of have to, you set the expectation. I tell them, I said, one thing you don't understand is that mom and dad have built this business from the ground up. And so it's as much of a child to them as you are. And so they're very protective of it. But again,
Well,
then you have to go back to the parents and say, you know what? You've got to allow them. I forget how you phrased it, but it was kind of the one thing I always said. You give your kids a rope, but not enough to hang themselves.
that's one of my clients in Texas says that a lot. I really like that. The other thing that you said that I want to come back to too is that the universe rewards hard work. I think if we look at people that are very successful in sports, athletics, medicine, they work harder than just about everybody. They do certain things a certain way, and that's what I help them. So even if mom and dad, they built this great shop, it's got a beautiful reputation. Guess what? You've got competition all the time coming along. You have insurance companies that have opinions. You have consumers that have opinions. So that was back to your thing about entitlement and work ethic.
Mhm.
I really believe that I'm going to have my 25th anniversary, by the way, this fall. I
Oh,
can't believe
awesome.
that. That's crazy. But
Yeah.
in 25 years, I don't think I've come across one business where it's like, oh my God, they make widgets. It's easy. It's profitable. There's no competition. They just keep doing it. You have to keep getting better at what you do.
Mhm.
You got to keep refining. You got to keep doing your best every time. So, and that's where my work is this idea of reflective practitioner. I
Oh,
overuse the sports analogy, and I'm not a huge sports guy, although I do love golf and I love the NFL.
okay.
We have to keep thinking about how we're going to do things, then perform, then review the game film and see if we could do better. And we keep doing that over and over again to keep refining our processes and holding each other accountable. I'm sure I mean, I don't think you found many businesses where they're just like on cruise control and it needs no attention. It
Right.
needs leadership and it needs reinvention.
Yeah.
And that's where leadership comes in.
Right. And it's funny. I had an old mentor of mine that used to say, a business is never flatlining.
Yeah.
And if it is flatlining, that means it's dead. Okay. Because, we've all
Yeah,
seen the
totally.
ER and we know what happens on that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you're either growing or you're declining. And I think, yeah, you've always got to be evolving. And especially you look in the collision industry. I mean, vehicles are completely different now than they were, 20 years ago. I mean, what
Yeah.
happened to the carburetor? It's gone. All right. Now
Yeah.
we're actually driving computers on wheels. All right.
I just got a new car. It's like a spaceship. I'm just amazed at this thing. And I have a client in the collision industry. And yeah, I mean, the insurance companies are turning the screws to them.
That's right.
There's product and part shortages.
Mhm.
You've got a limited amount of space on the lot and you got too many cars. And then you're worried because you're two of your best paint guys, these two brothers, all of a sudden aren't happy and they're going to go away. And that's the other thing. You got to have good people, man. I mean,
Oh
you
God,
get
yeah.
all the parts and all that, but you have to find a way to have a culture. And that's the other thing that happens. Everybody was real loyal to dad, but now that the kids have come in, some of dad's loyal lieutenants are like, I'm not sure about this. So the kids, they have to build their own loyal lieutenants and they also have to work with dad's loyal lieutenants. And
Yes.
so I just wrote an article that's going to get published in about 6 months at about 5 generations in the workforce. For the first time ever, we have
Right.
5 generations actually. So as a leader, you've got to be able to navigate all of those different needs and values.
Right. What I like is this think through your family business coaching system, you've developed tools to help families to be able to navigate these things. And I want you to little talk about that family business coaching system that you have, what it does and what you offer through that system.
Yeah. Well, it's a combination of individual and group coaching. It could be at the family level, it could be the management team. And as we both talked about before, the value of your business is also directly related to the strength and stability of your management team.
Right.
So I give them tools to measure performance, give and receive feedback, continue to set goals, and review and critique performance and connect with each other. So I really give them the tools. I stay with them for a while, and then I want to work myself out of a job so that they can do it. Not that uncommon where a client will call up and say, hey, we need a tune up. Could you come back and spend a little more time with us? Could we do, I know, like my collision client, they've got to go get the latest training from Mercedes or Lexus. You got to go re-up your training. But I'm going to give them tools, teach them how to use it, then allow them to use it themselves. And again, that's an ongoing process. I've told my 230 somethings, if you can fall in love with the process,
Yes.
then you've really got it made. I mean, I know you and I'd probably say the same thing. My
Right.
business, it changes each year. You have to keep refining. So if you can get good at being a reflective practitioner, learning how to be objective, see how you're doing, keep doing it again, then you've really got a sustainable system.
Exactly. I don't know if you've read the book 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan and Dr.
Hmm.
Benjamin Hardy.
I haven't, but I've heard
Okay.
of it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a phenomenal book. I read it the latter part of last year, and really this whole year has been about kind of transforming my business. But and I've actually been referring it to clients
Nice.
in this situation, and what they say is, so if you want to double your business, okay, it's going to take you twice as much work as what you're doing. When you
Yeah.
want to 10x your business, now all of a sudden you're way outside your comfort zone, and you can't think about, okay, how much more work do I put in, but how do I do things differently?
Yeah, it's great.
And
Yeah.
I've actually recommended it to a number of my clients because, again, I give you a great example. I had a meeting last night with one of them, couple. They're 55. He's putting in 70 to 80 hours a week. He's burned
Yeah.
out. Didn't
Right.
know what his options were. It said I just want to sell it. I just want to sell it. But the problem is, I said, well, what are you going to do for the next couple of years? You're
Mm,
too young to retire.
mm,
And he's like,
mm.
oh, no, no, I'm going to work for the shop. Well, imagine an
Yeah, right.
now coming
Yeah.
back into a shop and having to be an employee. You think that's
Yeah.
going to work, right?
Right.
So it doesn't work. So as I took them through my process, they realized that, you know what, we've got this cash cow. We live a really good lifestyle on it. We need to change. So they're starting to realize that they need to change. The
Yeah.
problem is like, and this actually was a comment that, the wife told me, or no, the husband told me, he goes, my wife's telling me that I got to hold the carrot out to the employees and I just want to use the stick.
Yeah.
you
That's
know
great.
and so we've
So
been talking about this idea of how to expand their thinking and we have to start thinking differently about how we
yeah.
do business.
Well,
Go
and you
ahead.
know what thought that came to my mind there is, this going from owner operator to owner investor. See, that's what you just said there
Right.
now. Rather than you being there, sleeves rolled up, working on 6 cars, you're now trying to get at the board level and that's exactly what happened with that collision client I was working with. Now they want to try to become a board and have the management team report to them. How are
That's
our
right.
results and what's happening? And it's really hard for them to go to that board level. That's the evolution of a business. And
Mhm.
that's really your legacy in my way of thinking. I mean, if you turn around tomorrow and your business can't operate, then you haven't really, I think, done it the right way. If you're doing it the right way, your brand, your process can live on well beyond you. Or you
Right.
can be an investor and continue to reap the benefits of what you built.
Oh, exactly. It's funny. I have my very first collision client. I remember, I've been working with him, and this is before I even got into, exit planning and doing this
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, it was just, I met him he and his wife on a plane. We got
Uh,
chatting. He said, "Do you do business succession?" I'm thinking, buy sell agreements, key guy
yeah.
insurance. I'm like, yeah. And all of a sudden, I kind of got thrown into this dynamic with the kids in the business and doesn't know if they're capable. And so as I was working with them, but the one thing I identified with them was that he didn't necessarily want to leave the business. Like he really loves building the culture of his business, and he liked to become the 50,000 foot CEO. And I could never get him to act, like start
Mm,
making progress in that. So I got another client of mine. He's a young guy, no collision experience. When he was in high school, he swept floors in a collision shop. Went
yeah.
to Notre Dame, studied pre-med, went to Villanova, started in med school, decided he didn't like it. So he left, went back to the collision shop, said, "Hey, I'd like to learn the collision business." Started working like, doing finance, office manager stuff, ended up buying the shop, bought 2 other shops. And, as I'm working with him, he's wanted to become, I call it the incidental owner. Okay.
Yeah. 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 Good.
So the end of last year, I told him, I said, "Look, I want you to take 4 weeks off.
Mm.
No email, no contact with the business." Terrified him, but he did it. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, my business grew." And so
Good
it's
job.
kind of a test. We ran a test to
Yeah.
see if it worked.
Yeah.
Here's what's interesting. So he's a big systems guy. And my first client, really good with systems. So I connected the two of them, got him to come down. They met, spent the whole day together. And all of a sudden, like the next day, my first client calls me and says, "You know what? I want to get to where Tom is." And I'm thinking, I've been trying to get you here for 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
needed to see that it was possible, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
I think
that's
that's
what
a
an
viable option.
outsider can do. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a viable option. I've actually run into this. I got 3 other cases that I'm working on right now that we've kind of moved, and they've said, "You know what? If I only had to be involved in the business 20 hours a week, then why do I want to sell it? I mean, I'm making good money off it. It's got good cash flow." And so that's what we start working towards. But again, I think you have to develop the culture and the leadership to be able to do that.
Well, and that's the thing that just came to my mind too. This guy's really good at fixing vehicles, knowing how to run an auto body shop, a collision shop, maybe isn't studying leadership. Leadership has
Right.
its own set of skills, it has its own language. And back to the beginning, leadership has changed a lot over even the last 10 years, about
Yeah.
what people's expectations are. So the same leadership approach that I had in 1990 is not going to work today. And
Right.
so that's why, and part of the value proposition I've been saying to people is let you do what you do. Let me do what I do, which is just to help your people be better leaders and really study and improve leadership, because you don't have the time to do that. You don't have the bandwidth to do that. This is what I do every day. It would be dumb for me to go how to learn how to fix a bent fender, just like, speed up your leadership development. So I'm really the leadership specialist in their place. And I use that again, back with the sports analogy. You have a strength and conditioning coach on most professional teams, somebody
Mhm.
that's just helping people get stronger.
Right.
That's what I do. I help them just get better at leadership,
Yeah,
and it can make a
exactly.
big difference.
Oh, that makes a huge difference. And I think the one mistake that most business owners make is that they don't have that coach or coaches.
Yeah.
So, like I know even in my life, like I have a coach
Yeah.
and he works specifically with financial advisors.
Yeah.
But one thing that I learned was that, okay, that's great, but I also need coaches in other areas that he's not,
Totally.
you know. So
Specialization.
I've got personal coaches that I work with. Some of it's on leadership. Some, I've got practice
Yeah.
management people that I work with. So I think it's important to have a team around you, and it not necessarily just one, because I think you need that team to really become your most effective.
Well, the other thing I was going to say, I work in non-family businesses as well. And
Okay.
that was an interesting thing, because I think in the corporation, in a big corporation, they use consultants and outside expertise all the time. But a family's got kind of this pride. They're like, oh no, we've been doing it this way. My grandfather used to do it, and now my dad does it, and I do it this way. And it's like, okay, I hear you. And we're frugal. Oh no, we don't need to pay for outside expertise. And so I think that's another thing about the family businesses. Like,
Right.
hey, if you want to get better, if you want to create this sustainable, great company, you got to look outside yourself a little bit.
Oh gosh, yeah. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
actually, it's funny, I'm doing a program right now with another coach about positive intelligence. And it's really about, we have these saboteurs that are in our minds, and how we learn to identify them and to kind of allow them to pass, and we can start accessing what they call the sage part of our minds. But
It's a great body of work. I love that guy's work. I did the training.
yeah.
And that's the thing, to just get people to start to see. I have this thing called detached observer. And
Ah,
that's
right,
like
right.
to put somebody 5 feet above you, to just notice, like, oh, every time Susie walks in my office, my blood pressure goes up and I want to just wring her neck. Okay, well, instead of just doing that every time, start to be curious. The sage part of you is like, what is it about Susie that gets your blood pressure up? Oh,
Yeah.
well, she did this. So we're just trying to get people to step back and to be able to be a better observer of who they are. And
Right.
the other thing that I keep coming back to is, I'm trying to get in the hearts and minds of your leaders, to help them get in the hearts and minds of your employees, because we all know this. Like in any business, if I've got somebody that's been here 5, 10 years, they're really good at it, they know our systems, they do it efficiently, and they walk out the door, it's really expensive. It's really
Oh yeah.
difficult for productivity and efficiency and profitability. So I really believe, and there's another system that I use and I've had some exposure to, where they talk about slow to hire, quick to fire. Like, let's get rid of some people too. I mean,
Right.
sometimes in these families, we've got Ralph over there. He's been with us for 15 years. He's not really very good at what he does, but he's Ralph. We like him. And his mother's in my church group. I mean, like, finding a way to again evaluate performance,
Yeah.
coach Ralph up or out of the business. And I think that's something that people aren't very good at.
No, no, I agree. I agree, and it's interesting because yeah, I was talking about the business with the two sons, and the one who was entitled. Actually, we worked through a process, and we found that he wasn't passionate about the business, and
Totally.
so we basically we didn't fire him, but he ended up leaving. He's now working in his juster. He's got a 9 to 5 job, which he loves. He's making good money doing it. And it was one of the best things for him. One thing I wanted to ask you, and I see this a lot, some of the most successful family businesses I run into, the kids have left. They haven't started work. Either they started working the business, left, went to the outside world and came back, or they started in the outside world and came back. And do you see that there's benefits to that?
You know what? It's funny. In some of the families I work with, we call it pre-employment policy. We actually put a policy, we put a family white paper together that says, hey, if you'd like to come work here in the business, that's fine. You can work here during high school and college. We'd like for you then to get a degree. We'd like for you to go work out for somebody else. The degree maybe is not as important today.
Right.
We're kind of have different thoughts on that. I love one of my dreams of the Family Business Performance Center, and this is something you could do. You could steal this and not pay me
Okay.
for it, is
All right.
to
Sure.
take some collision kids from Pittsburgh and plunk them down in Phoenix. And I want to take the Phoenix kid and go plunk him down in Pittsburgh because it's good for your identity. Like in my business, it was called Walsh Brothers Office Equipment. I had the wrong last name. So as soon as I walked in,
Mhm.
a guy who was a friend of a friend told the friend, oh, the grandson of the owner just got here. Huh, this ought to be good. Kind of roll in their eyes. So
Yeah.
it's really good to go work someplace else, get 3 promotions, be a division manager, now come back and work for the family business, not the other way around. I think it's an important piece. But when I talked to the owners and founders, they said to me, this one guy, Tony, said to me, he's like, nobody could teach them better than me. Why would I want them to go learn from somebody else? See, that's the thing. When they go work at that national collision company, they might come back and have some good ideas to bring into your company. So I think it's an important thing. It
Uh,
really is.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. So I just looked at the time. Yeah, I told you I try to keep these between 25 and 30 minutes, and we've gone way long on that.
Well, you told me that we might go off like we did, but
Well, I
we're
did.
passionate about what we do, but it's all good.
Exactly,
It's all
exactly,
good.
and you know what? And I could keep going on because I think we
Yeah.
both have a passion for,
Yeah.
business and family business and
Yeah.
just seeing them succeed and
Yeah.
thrive and create multi-generational legacies.
No
Love to
question.
have you on again, maybe, Pete. We can dive deeper into this,
I'd love to do it. I'd
topic,
love to
but
do it.
I wanna give you a chance. You got any final thoughts you wanna share with the audience?
Yeah, I want them to visit familybusinessperformance.com because you talked about that. I've got some great free tools for them where they can go in. I've got the family business scorecard, which people like a lot. The family business landmine detection kit will show you kind of where some problems could bubble up. So yeah, I just encourage them to go get some of those free tools. I'd love to get a chance to work with them. And I'm glad if they just come and get the free tools. I want to help people, businesses get better. And I just appreciate you and getting to meet you. And we've already got to kind of have a family that we're helping. And that's the stuff that we love. So no, this is
Exactly.
really good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And like I said, I think I see too many times where families blow up over these silly little issues within businesses. And I think watching it come together and, something that I'm always passionate about is saying how we can help a business owner create a legacy similar to what the Rockefellers and the Mellons did that moves on for many, many generations. And it doesn't necessarily have to just be the business, but how can we impact society as a family in a long-term way? That's really where my passion is. And I think you feel the same way about that.
I have to go one other place. The
Okay.
family business playbook is
Oh,
there as well. My
okay.
grandfather was into this stuff in the 1950s and 60s, and he was writing about how to be a productive employee focused. So when I wrote this book, I took his papers and I put them in the book. And I always wanted to work with him. And I said, now, Grandpa, you are an author in a published book, and that's legacy too, man. It's just so
Right.
cool. A family business has such an opportunity for legacy. So I just really appreciate the chance to have an impact and collaborate with you today.
No problem. I really enjoyed it, Pete. And like I said, we'll have you back on and we can get some even deeper
Would love
dives
to
in this.
do it.
But Pete, I want to thank you for being on. The last thanks goes out to you, the audience. If you've not subscribed to the podcast, please click the subscribe button below. That way, when a new episode drops, it'll go right onto your device. If you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a 5-star review. That way we can get the information from great guests like Pete out to more people. So again, I appreciate everybody. Appreciate you, Pete. And again, thanks for listening to Your Business, Your Life. Take care and God bless.
Thanks.
Hey, I really want to thank you for listening to the Your Business, Your Life podcast. If you want to be notified when new episodes become available, click the subscribe button below.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of High Lift Financial. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investment, legal, or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding your business or personal planning. DiFrancesco Financial Concierge LLC DBA High Lift Financial is a registered investment advisor. Registration with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission or any state security authority does not imply a certain level of skill or training.